Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us at the Tampa Bay Equity Incubator Information Session webinar. This session is being recorded and will be posted on the Pinellas Community Foundation website within 2 business days. We will have approximately 50 minutes of information to present to you, followed by our open question and answer section. Your sound is muted until our open Q&A portion. So as we go throughout this webinar, however, feel free to enter any questions in the chat and we will answer them at the end. So on the next slide, you'll see that we're going to share the overview with you today of the Tampa Bay Equity Incubator. We're so excited that you're joining us today. And by the end of the webinar, you will have a better understanding of how your organization can participate and contribute to the nonprofit ecosystem while going from talking to doing. And we'll share a little bit more about that as well. We will conclude again with the Q&A. So remember to keep those questions coming in the chat. And again, for those who are just joining, we welcome you. And we're going to go a little bit more into explaining about our Tampa Bay Equity Incubator. So my name is Delquanda Turner-Smith. I am the Principal Consultant of Inclusivity LLC and will be serving as the incubator's project lead. Accompanying me today are my team members, Lottie, Sarah from the Inclusivity LLC, as well as our partner organization, David Bender, who is the Director of Grants and Operations with the Pinellas Community Foundation. You'll be hearing more from the team members throughout the webinar. So how did this collaboration come to be? The inception of the Tampa Bay Equity Incubator started when the Pinellas Community Foundation and Inclusivity LLC solidified its public-private partnership several years ago. And to date, we have partnered to offer an annual diversity, equity, and inclusion virtual conference for the past 2 years. As partners, we did have to acknowledge and agree upon several things first that I wanted to review with you all. We had to agree that disparities do exist. We had to agree and acknowledge that these disparities were created by systems designed by groups of people to benefit themselves. We also acknowledge that equity requires more through a disproportionate investment in those historically marginalized systems by advancing cultural competence capacity. And we will like to acknowledge that the journey may not always be easy, yet it is attainable. And lastly, and most recently, we acknowledge that there's a Florida legislator bill intended to limit how workplace and classrooms around the state handle discussions around critical race theory. The good news is that we do not and have not approached equity from critical race theory, yet through a cultural competency lens. So the foundation offers support, services, resources, information to address the needs of people and nonprofit organizations of Pinellas County. And also inclusivity believes in the presence of diversity, plus the practice of inclusion equals an innovative and culturally competent economy. Together, we have a shared goal to impact the nonprofit ecosystem and partner towards a strong collaborative ecosystem that drives change. Because of our collective missions, shared goal, ability to acknowledge and address disparities. In 2021, the Pinellas Community Foundation received initial funding from the W.K. Kellogg Foundation for the Tampa Bay Equity Incubator. So to explain to you a little bit more about the Tampa Bay Equity Incubator and to go from talking to doing, which we took the theme from talking to doing to continue the conversation from one of our conferences that we hope some of you may have attended. We realize that as the demographic landscape of the 21st century continues to evolve, nonprofit organizations can be successful and most impactful when there's a strong collaborative ecosystem working together to drive change. We know that nonprofits cannot transform the system alone, and that all sector change agents must contribute to this system we desire for a better community. So it's one thing to talk about culture competence, systems change, and the needs within organization, while it's another to actually commit to doing the work and putting that talk into action. So the incubator provides the innovative solution and helps organizations go from talking to doing in order to be a contributing partner to transform the ecosystem. We will achieve this through a team of subject matter experts who will walk alongside organizations. So therefore, there is no exchange of funding. So this is not for funding, but you'll receive those resources through the subject matter experts who will help you to increase your organization's capacity to better reflect the community served, resources that implement strategies and programming that promote outcomes, also to support resources by means of learning and development activities to educate staff, prepare leaders and boards, and community stakeholders to be more equitable, skilled, and inclusive. Our goal of the incubator is to ensure that the nonprofit organizations scale their cultural competence capacity to support and transform the ecosystem. And I know that you all are hearing that a lot as we go along, but we just want to make sure that we are re-emphasizing that. So a few of the key terms that we wanted to review with you to level set as we go throughout this webinar, as we talk about the application, and also throughout the incubator itself. We wanted to just take a few moments to review a few key terms that we have defined throughout this time together. So we use cohorts. We identify cohorts as invited organizations who participate during the years of 2022 and 23. We also may refer to cohort as the incubator as well. Again, those are the invited organizations. When we talk about cultural competency and capacity, those are the ability for organizations to interact effectively with people or different cultures and lived experience. This shows up in different forms of diversity, equity, communication between staff, and employee participation. Again, you'll hear a little bit about some of these terms throughout our session as well. We define DEI as diversity, or the data that represents collective voices in an organization or community. Equity, or organizational cultures that no one voice is louder than another. And inclusion, which are those business systems that define how voices are heard. Engagement is a method of fully participating in various development strategies, touch points, and or activities that drive change. So when we'll talk a little bit more about being fully engaged and what does that mean. You'll also hear throughout this session learning and development, which are the opportunities to educate organizations, leadership, staff, and other stakeholders by means of workshops, trainings, peer learning, and or roundtables. They are designed to connect, share, and grow experiences. We also look at our raw model. Are organizations ready, able, and willing to pursue cultural competence and develop tools to drive change? Lastly, we talk about the Tampa Bay Equity Incubator, sometimes referred to as TBEI, and Incubator. This is a contributing force to the ecosystem working collaboratively towards equitable outcomes. And we hope that you'll continue to be interested in this incubator process. And next, I will turn it over to Lottie, who will go over eligibility.
Excellent. Thank you, Dokwanda. So you don't have to memorize all of these. We're going to have all of this right on the website, but we do want to address them to bring them up front so you kind of know what we're looking for in terms of who can actually participate in the incubator. First, you have to have a 501c3 status. So that's actually your nonprofit status. Two, you need to have an you need to be operational and providing direct services and programs in Pinellas County for at least 1 year in order to apply to participate in the program. You have to have access to technology to fully participate in this virtual setting. And why that's important, because we have things like Zoom and uploading documents that's going to require you to have the infrastructure to support this. Additionally, you'll need a governing and an operational body. So that will include a board of directors, leadership team, a designated in-house HR representative, staff, and vendors. And finally, we need to make sure that you do file your Form 990 because that does tell us that you are a 501c3. Along with eligibility, we do need to talk about disqualifiers. So if you've participated in the cultural competence assessment in the past couple of years, so 20, 21, and 22, you will not be able to participate in this process. So I think if you question whether you are, you probably know some of us here already. So if you know some of us, it might not be that you probably have disqualified for that. Additionally, hospitals, educational institutions, animal welfare organizations, house of worship, government agencies, continuing care retirement communities, and grant-making foundations are not eligible. And finally, so this is a little bit important to just remember this. If you have been a recipient of Pinellas Community Foundation's grants in the past, and if you were out of compliance or did not file all the required documentation that they required, it will have a negative impact on the application. Next slide. Eligibility commitment. So let's talk about what we're asking of the organizations to commit. First, we are at least asking you to commit 12 months of time with us. And I know it seems like a big ask, like, wow, that's a lot of time commitment to one organization, but we're gonna be there with you the whole process. So it's not like you're just out on your own and doing your own thing. We will be there with you because we do want to move this process along. It's important for us to get the results we need, right, in order to come to the conclusion of what capacity building looks like for your organization. But what does that commitment look like? It looks like weekly engagements. So what does weekly engagements look like? It includes, for example, if we have a request for documentation, we would require that you submit that within a week of the request, that your team, your leadership team, your board of directors, your staff participate in certain things like focus groups, completing focus groups like workshops, coaching. Additionally, like completing organizational surveys and assessments timely, and then like participating in some of the learning and development opportunities that are coming up. So for example, you'll do like the peer-to-peer learning, you'll have roundtables, you'll have the workshops, you'll have coaching. Next, let's talk about timeline of like how all this is going to work out. So questions to find direct. Okay, next slide, please.
We'll be answering all questions at the end, but definitely put them in the chat if you have them.
Okay, great. Timeline. So right now the application is open. So the application opened Friday, March 4th, and it's going to stay open until Friday, April 8th. And it closes, I think that's a Monday, April 11th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for those that cut it right to the end there. And then during that process, if you have questions, all the questions will be fielded with through Delquanda and David. So any questions you have, you can email them directly, or I think there's an info, is that right? Delquanda info at email that you can ask questions. We will also have a Q&A, like a frequently asked questions page if you need to. There's questions that are like commonly asked, we'll put stuff there too. Once the application is submitted, it's going to go through the due diligence process. And the due diligence process is pretty much, we're going to check to make sure all the required documentation is there and that the important questions have been answered. And there's going to be some going back and forth in terms of if something's not complete, somebody will reach out to you. Then it's going to go to the selection committee. The selection committee consists of 5 representatives from the foundation and the funding agencies. The selection committee will score the applications, and then they'll meet to deliberate and then decide on the 4 organizations that are going to move on with the implementation process. In May, an invitation will be emailed to the selected organizations. once that's done, we'll go through implementation. So implementation is actually from June 2022 to May 2023. So that's taking action to the doing. And then the first part of that is going to be the preparation and the assessment. And Sarah's going to talk more about that in the slides afterwards. And then in December and November and December, there will be another reassessment at that midpoint to see how everyone's doing, the organizations that were picked, like how they were doing as they're going through the process. And then May 2023 to June 2023 is the final assessment phase. So that is actually the timeline for when we think everything is going to be complete and finalized. And then the next few slides, Sarah's going to go through the application details.
All right. Well, thank you, Lottie. I want to walk you through the process, and you'll actually get to see this on David's screen very shortly. So this is just kind of some background and context to give you an idea of what to expect with the application. So starting out, we call the beginning questions an eligibility quiz. Now, don't be intimidated by the word quiz. Nobody likes that word, right? But what we're looking at here is essentially exactly what Lottie just outlined in the eligibility. So these are steps to confirm that your organization is well suited and well positioned to take part in participating in the application, answering the questions, and then moving forward to potentially be part of the incubator. So the questions have all been previously reviewed, and as I said, you'll see an example on David's screen shortly, but organizations have to meet all of these requirements in order to move on to the next phase. And if you have any challenges completing the eligibility quiz, if it's technologically related, that's a David question, and if it's content related, that will go to Delquanda. So the next slide goes into the sections of the application. So these are the main headers that you'll see in the application stage. It's made up of several sections to assess your organization's readiness to participate in the incubator. And the sections include organizational topics, sustainability, programmatic performance, financials, cultural competence, and readiness and commitment. And these categories were selected with intention. They represent indicators of cultural competency, organization-wide, as well as organizational capacity to move forward in a sustainable manner. To that end, the questions that are housed within each of these categories that are listed on your screen allow the selection committee the opportunity to learn more about your organization's approach, where you are in your respective journeys, and your outlook for the future. So to dive in on the next slide, we'll go over the organizational categories, or the organizational piece of the application. General organizational details such as the mission are collected early on in the application. This is really just to give us context on your organization and for informational purposes. We want to understand your organization's finances, so moving to the financial column there. We want to see that there is an annual filing of a 990 form, that the board is approving your organization's budget, and then there's an explanation. There's an opportunity to explain any variances, deficits, or surpluses that are indicated in any of the documents that you do upload. We asked about, under sustainability, your organization's tenure, as well as your leadership's tenure, and having an awareness of your organization's longevity and sustainability. It allows the selection committee to better understand the makeup of your organization and your long-term commitment to this journey. And then we also want to understand your organization's programmatic performance. So that's your process for evaluating the effectiveness of the services that you're providing, measuring your effectiveness, your frequency of doing so, and any patterns with those measurement activities. And then the next slide goes into cultural aspects of the application, as well as some upload details. So we're asking for demographic information about your organization, and the intent is to understand your current diversity makeup. And with a lot of these open-ended questions, we took a lot of time to provide clear examples of what we're looking for. So you're really not going into the application blind and wondering what we're asking for. We do give pretty explicit examples of the type of information that we're looking for these questions. And we recognize that some organizations are not required to collect this data and may not even understand the process of doing so or why. And that's okay. If you don't currently collect the data, there is a place in the application to indicate your reasoning for not participating in that data collection at the current point in time. The idea with all of this is for us to in a way walk alongside your organization and understand how you're taking action to represent the communities that you serve. That's really the intent of getting a demographic snapshot of the organization. Additionally, we ask questions pertaining to your organization's principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And these may be fine-tuned, they may be developed, they may be in their infancy. Nothing is a disqualifier. We really, again, are trying to understand where you are at this point in time. We want to understand your organization's capacity and ask you to reflect on where you are, your opinion on where you are versus where you would like to be regarding the board composition, staff composition, fundraising capacity, your volunteer network, as well as your marketing effectiveness. We want to understand why your organization would like to participate in the cohort. So there's an opportunity to provide some open-ended comments there. And we want to ensure that you understand the requirements and that you're fully engaged in the process. Another component of this is the document upload. So there are some required documents as well as some optional document uploads. The required documents are surrounding the financials that we mentioned earlier, the 990s, board approved organizational budget, explanation of any deficiencies or surpluses. And the additional uploads can be anything like your strategic plan, DEI statements, policies and practices that you have in place, anything that you feel gives us valid context to what we're trying to learn about your organization. And then finally, the selection committee is going to look at a rubric on the next slide. The selection committee scores all of the applications, and we're really seeking organizations that demonstrate sustainability through leadership as well as succession planning in place. Interest and efficacy in evaluating your program, so that data collection piece and that monitoring how you're doing. Stable and sound finances, collection of data that's pertinent to the organization and community that you serve, as well as rationale if you're not currently collecting that information. We're looking for self-awareness and really thought put into the answers that we're receiving to understand your current place in the equity journey. And then big picture, we're looking at our RAW acronyms. So ready, able, and willing. So readiness, how prepared are you to embark on this journey, your ability or your capacity to do so, and then willingness, your eagerness in participating. So thank you for your time. And next, David will go over the application in real time and the portal.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sarah. And hi, everyone. I'm David Bender. I work at Pinellas Community Foundation. Lots of familiar faces on here, faces and names. So welcome back to another webinar. So I'm going to get started now walking us through how to get to the Tampa Bay Equity Incubator page, how to log into the portal, and then how to do the eligibility quiz and the application itself. If any of you, I know some grantees of the Pinellas Cares Nonprofit Partnership Fund, cue the traumatic flashbacks, use the eligibility quiz. It is the same feature. So I will get us onto the PCF webpage now. Just 1 second. So when you go to pinellascf.org, our homepage, if you scroll to the bottom, Tampa Bay Equity Incubator accepting applications, Click that to get to the incubator landing page. Scroll to the bottom. Also, this is where we'll be, this box, register for the webinar, will be replaced by a link to what we're recording right now. So, and the slides as well. So no worries there if you can't take notes quick enough. So scroll to apply now. And the login page for the grant portal comes up. If you have an account, use your existing one. If you don't, create an account. It walks you through username, password, and it also asks for the executive leadership at your organization. It creates an account for them as well. So once you're in, you'll go to the, it'll be on the applicant dashboard. Click apply at the top and it will say eligibility quiz, an initial screening. So we will do this right now quick. Direct services. So I saw a quick question and I'll take advantage to answer now. This means that you have clients that you serve and that you provide programming. This is, so the opposite of that would be advocacy work, where you are working, let's say in trying to community organizing, for example, where you don't have clients, but you have kind of political outcomes. That's one example. So direct services, the majority of you on here do direct services. Food banks, mental health programming, legal aid. I would also say arts and culture. Let's say you do arts and culture education, that counts as direct service. As Delquanda mentioned, a cultural competency assessment, specifically from inclusivity. Let's say you've done DEI work with other businesses. That's okay. This is specifically Inclusivity LLC. When did you become operational? I'm going to put 1969 when PCF was founded. I'm putting yes, even though we're not direct services, just to get through the quiz. Access to fully participate on virtual platforms. Yes. We have board of directors, leadership team, and staff. We file a 990 and we commit to fulfilling these expectations. Submit eligibility, and it will then say you're welcome to apply. So you click continue, apply again. So it takes you through basic organizational background information, EIN, mission statement, and then sustainability of, as we talked about before, current and past leadership, a succession plan, and programmatic performance. I'll delve a little bit deeper into this. If on a grant application you were asked for outcomes, and if you filled out a PCF grant application, you know you were. So asking about outcomes, how are you evaluating those? What are you doing to see the effectiveness of your programming? For an arts and culture organization, this might look a little different. You might not be using a validated scale to see if, let's say, a behavioral health client is improving. You might still talk about arts knowledge expanding. Is your curriculum part of a standard? Does that standard, so are you measuring what you're doing against something? How is it done and when is it done? That's what this question is asking. For the board approved budget, pretty straightforward, 990, these are uploads. These accept PDFs for the 990, and board approved budget for is Excel or PDF. I will say for the 990, some firms provide an encrypted version so that when you go to open it, it requires a password. If that's the case, call me and please give me the password, or I can unlock it on my end. Don't email it to me because email is not a secure way to transmit passwords. You can call me, I can unlock it on my end and then upload the decrypted version to the application. I can do that, no problem. But it does cause a bit of a headache when I go to review all the applications at once and find a locked one because it delays it going to committee. So if we can head that off during the application process, please help me do that. Deficits and surpluses allow a PDF or Word document. And then the cultural competence section. This is going to be the most intensive part of the application. Why is participating in this cohort important to your organization? What we're looking for here is self-awareness. If you were the most perfectly culturally competent organization that looked like the community, you wouldn't need to participate. We're not looking for perfection. This incubator wouldn't exist if we were all there. What we're looking for is kind of you staking your, here's where we are, here's why we might be here, and here's what we're looking to improve. So why is this important? And then, does your organization consider itself led by a member of one or more of the following populations? We are looking at BIPOC, LGBTQ+, neurodiverse, physically disabled, or another identity that in society is marginalized. And here's the big monster question of demographic data, and that it will take time to complete. Go through this thoughtfully and make sure you answer every category in terms of race and ethnicity, sexual gender identity, neurodiversity, physical ability, and generation, so age. Please use these categories. I know it's a bit of a headache, but it allows us some standardization when looking at the entire applicant pool. And just fill out this narrative section completely. And if, as Sarah mentioned, if you don't have a category, explain why. It doesn't mean, oh, we don't collect disability data, it's not an automatic kick. Explain why. Part of being in this cohort could be a way of starting that data collection and then optimizing it. So it's not an automatic kick out if you don't have this data, but we want to see that you're at least aware you're not collecting it. And then kind of, again, with that idea of self-awareness, rate yourself on its equity journey, on your cultural competence. How have you implemented principles of cultural competence into your governance, operations, and programs? Let's just say you have an advisory council that provides a feedback mechanism into your organization. Let's say its wheels are a little rusty right now. Say that. Say we got started, but we're having this issue, or we don't know where to start. We are looking for some blunt honesty here. These applications will remain confidential within this process. They will not influence grant applications. What you answer here will not influence, let's say you're applying for a grant this summer from PCF, they will not talk, these processes do not talk to each other. What you share here will not be shared with those committees, and vice versa, except for missing reports. So let's say you were denied from a grant last year, that denial will not influence this process. Non-compliance will. Conflict, yeah, that's what I'll say. These processes don't talk to each other. And again, rating yourself on board composition, staff composition, fundraising capacity, volunteer development, and marketing and communications. How do you think cultural competence and these aspects of nonprofit operations, how are these merged in your organization? To what extent? Very strongly or very weakly? Rate yourself. And then again, where would you like to develop in regards to the above areas? We're getting to the end now. Any additional uploads that you may have, this is great for, let's say you have a strategic plan around cultural competence. Let's say any policies that you may have modified to be more culturally competent, upload them here and give a bit of an explanation. I think that really shows a good faith effort on an applicant's part. We're in this, we're trying, we might not be there yet, and this is why we're perfect for the incubator. And then one more aspect of commitment. As we've talked about, this will be time intensive and labor intensive, but we think it's going to be a really fruitful experience. So again, a recommitment to all of this, submit application, and that's the end. So I will go back to the PowerPoint now, where we'll talk more about the decision-making and when you get the actual decision about your application. And Delquanda will be doing this part, so I will start the screen sharing again now.
Thank you, David. We know you all have heard so much information today. Remember to go ahead and put your questions in the chat and we will answer them after our presentation today. So as David mentioned, we wanted to share with you how the decision-making process, Lottie touched upon it a little bit earlier, but we wanted to just remind you that after the selection committee has completed their process, invitations will be emailed and sometime in May. And again, this is a non-monetary participation cohort, which means we'll be providing resources to you rather than funding. Invited organizations will also be asked, like we've been re-emphasizing, to upload additional documents and schedule focus group sessions. This will allow our evaluators and data analysts to really look at your organization holistically and to be able to provide some recommendations as to how we move along in this equity journey and how your organization progresses within the equity journey. Focus groups will be with possibly staff, board members, Stakeholders, volunteers will make a decision based on the information that is received. A commitment agreement signature will be sent to the invited organizations, and we'll ask that the CEO signs it. The board does not need to sign it unless that is your process. Again, we'll be announcing the cohort of the invited organizations, possibly also via a press release so we can get the word out. And we will conduct a welcome orientation to provide you with additional details and reminders that will take place throughout this cohort. Again, this is a virtual participation cohort. We will be doing the majority of the implementation virtually. And also, again, feel free to contact myself if you have any questions regarding the content or David regarding technology. So we want to go a little bit deeper and just re-emphasize some of the things that you may have been hearing around the implementation phase and full engagement. So when we've been mentioning that a lot. So Lottie emphasized earlier about the organizations committing to various engagement. What we mean by that is that there'll be some type of weekly engagement. So this is a commitment. But weekly engagement may look differently between the organizations. We are anticipating weekly engagements being with your learning coach or your subject matter expert and the CEO to help really shape out what are those benchmarks and those evaluations that's trying to be achieved throughout this implementation period. One of the first engagements, as we mentioned before, is during the assessment and evaluation. So we will be asking of your time and that of your staff with focus groups to assess the organization's readiness and go a little bit deeper as to what we have already read and learned about your organization. Again, the engagement will vary from organization to organization. And it'll also include 2 to 3 workshops overall, either leadership specific or across the organization. Engagement also looks like monthly CEO roundtables. We are continuing with our DEI conference that's usually in October. So we would want and expect that you participate in that as well for additional learning opportunities. And I mentioned about the weekly coaching with your subject matter expert or your coach. And again, that'll help you strategize on some of the goals and benchmarks that you'll be participating with. Also, there'll be monthly peer learning opportunities. This will allow organizations to come together, as we mentioned earlier, to be able to learn, to share, and to strategize efforts as you all are going through the DEI journey. And again, throughout this time, we may be asking you to upload additional documents. Hopefully not. The good thing about this is that we're not asking you for any type of reporting. We're asking you for your time. These type of uploading documents, the focus groups, the weekly calls will help us track the progress and do the reporting. So that's a great thing about this. We won't be asking much, but there will be some type of giving that will require. And to that end, you will be engaging with various members from the inclusivity team, like we mentioned, to walk along the journey. So as we conclude this information session, we ask if your organization is raw. You've seen this term earlier, and what we mean by this is ready, able, and willing to pursue cultural competence and develop tools to drive change and practices within your organization, and better yet, throughout the ecosystem. This consists of an organization's readiness as the sum of its ability. We talk about the R for readiness, A for ability, plus the willingness to achieve capacity with a cultural competence lens. Ability, just to go a little bit deeper in what we've been talking about before, assesses organizational structures, protocols, processes designed for cultural competent equity-based work, while the willingness determines through that assessment of engagement, shared knowledge, individual and organization investment, and interest. So all of those things we've been talking about earlier about investing in your organization's readiness and also investing in the ecosystem for a stronger nonprofit. So we ask, we also want to know, are you able to clearly indicate your organization's needs, operations, and strategies? Is your organization fully committed to participating and also uploading documents in a timely fashion? Is your organization financially sound? These are all those questions that we would like to know, and that you'll be asked in the application as well. We encourage you to determine if your organization raw. If the answer is yes, that your organization is raw, we ask you to please complete the online application and submit it no later than April 11th. So don't wait to the last day or that weekend, please, to start on the application, and go ahead and start completing it. And we've been very mindful and cognizant of the number of questions to try to scale down so we can make this a easy flow application so we can get what we need, and only requesting for those documents that we're going to look for. So hopefully you'll find the the questions very straightforward. So again, you'll be able to ask questions through Friday, April 8th. And again, you can direct the questions for content to myself, and for technology related questions to David. With that being said, we want to thank you all so much for joining us. And now we'll move into the Q&A section. As a reminder, this is being recorded and will be posted on the Pinellas Community Foundation website within 2 business days and shared with all registrants. In addition, we'll create an FAQ section and have that on the website as well. Thank you so much. David's going to go through I'll turn it over to David.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Dalquanda. So we will start with the questions in the chat, and if there are questions remaining, I'll allow people to unmute themselves and ask verbally if they want to, and continue to put questions in the chat as well. So first one, if my org is in a transition phase in leadership, so the change is occurring at the end of April, how should we fill out those portions of the application?
Sarah, you want to take that?
Sure. There's a section in the application where we ask the past 3 leaders. So in that section, please indicate the transition as well as the 2 prior leaders. We ask about the beginning year that the leader initially served, and then immediate past, and so on and so forth. All of that is again, it's not a disqualifier. It gives us context on your organization. So yes, please include that. Thank you.
So the new leader would go, the one coming in would go under current executive leader?
Correct. Yeah.
Perfect. Who from the agency is responsible for attending the workshops and roundtables? Can there be several point people for this?
So there will be designated roundtables. If it's a CEO roundtable, only the CEO. So there will also be additional roundtables, again, based on the need and the information that's gathered from the assessments. If there's a need to gather the HR persons, for example, that will be a roundtable. But we prefer those leaders, and though in each category, whatever is being requested of the roundtables. But I can tell you for CEO roundtables, only the CEO can attend, not any proxies.
Great. Are workshops to be fully virtual? Yes. This slideshow will be uploaded. And will there be a lighter version of this or some type of seminar to help smaller organizations on DEI or driving DEI?
So our goal is to gather additional philanthropists and to gather additional support around this. What we hope to do is be very strategic and intentional about the DEI conference, because we know that's an opportunity to engage at that time as well. So if there are smaller organizations or organizations that may not qualify for this at the time, we're hoping to provide additional strategies in the DEI conference.
Awesome. And for password to open documents, could that be uploaded to the additional documents section to avoid additional touch points? Yes. If you know how to, if you were going to upload multiple PDFs to that section and you could put that on top, I also want to avoid tech headaches. It's up to you. You could put the password there. The grant portal is a secure platform. If you don't know how to merge PDF documents, no problem. Just give me a call, email. We'll get it on there somehow. That's my attitude for every application. We'll get it on there somehow. Great. So those were the questions in the chat, I believe. So if anyone wants to unmute themselves and ask a question, you could do so. About 30 seconds to see if anyone, also maybe someone's typing furiously.
Right, group.
Okay, I'm assuming no more questions. Okay. Do we want to wrap it up? Okay, is that enough? Okay, I can wrap it up. Sure. Well, thank you everyone for coming. As we stated, this will be on the website within the next 2 days. Once the Zoom recording is ready, we'll put a YouTube link on the website along with the slides. And that's all. I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend, and thank you for taking the time to join us on this webinar. Awesome.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks. Have a good weekend, everybody.
You too.
Bye-bye.